About the Hamlin, Mary Orvis Marbury says that it was first published in a book by Dr. Thaddeus Up de Graff in 1883 and named after a friend of his. I am tying the Hamlin from the illustration in Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories. I'm tying it on a number 8 hook that I've cut the eye off of to create a blind eye, and then I'm tying in a piece of fake gut. This is actually 6x tippet that I've double twisted to create a gut-like leader that I am lashing to the hook with waxed thread. I am using a wine or claret silk. And the color of the thread is determined by the color of the head of the fly in the illustration. Mary and the tyers at the Orvis company tied with either black or red silk, but they lacquered the heads on their flies, and that would have changed the color to this claret color. I'm going to be using a clear head cement on it when I am finished, so it's not going to change color. I'm just cutting off the knot that I tied into this fake gut in order to get it to not untwist. And I have tried to pull the gut or the fake gut, the leader, off of this hook after I've lashed it on, and I don't think I can. I'm going to wrap back just to the beginning of this sproat bend, or the bend on this sproat hook, and sproat is typical for the style of bend in the hooks that the Orvis company used. And I'm going to tie in a little piece of tinsel, and this is actually a metal tinsel, so it's gold on both sides, so it doesn't matter which way I tie it in. If I was using a contemporary Mallard tinsel that's bicolored, I would tie it in so that the gold side is towards the hook, and that way when I twist it, I flip it. I'm going to have to grab that with my hackle plier because it's a little bit short to manipulate by hand. And I'll just put a couple of wraps of this gold down here at the bend of the hook to create a tag. I haven't decided to splurge for a real blind hook. They're rather expensive. They're also black, so it's a little bit different than the color of this hook, but I'm going to go with it. So just wrap over the end of that tinsel to get it tied in, and then because it is metal, I'm just going to bend it back and forth until it breaks off. Bring my thread up to where I'm going to tie in the tail. So the tail, I'm using this Mallard feather. It is a secondary flight feather, and it has the white tips with the iridescent blue, or turning to gray as you get to the tip. Kind of depends on the feather. But I have 2 slips. I've taken them from opposing wing feathers, and I think I might have 4, 5, or 6 barbs in each of those. measure about the length of the hook. It's a fairly long tail in the illustration, and I'm just work to keep them on top of the hook centered. I'll wrap back over those until I get to the tag. And I use two so that I can put them outside to outside and it looks the same on both sides. I'm going to leave the butt ends in. That will keep the width of the body the same. And then for the body I'm using quill, and this is another application of the word quill. We have a variety of ways that we use the word quill. This one is the rachis. It's the stem out of the middle of a feather, and I happen to have one that's fairly dark brown. It's not real dark, but it's brown, and it matches, I think, fairly well the body in the illustration. I have to remember to keep putting wax on my thread. That helps the silk not deteriorate, but also silk is a little slippery, and so it helps it to adhere well to the hook. And I can see that I have kind of a diminishing, like my taper is almost backwards, but that's going to change because I've tied that piece of quill in by the tip end, and then as I wrap it, it's going to get thicker, and so that will create the taper. And I'm going to counter wrap it. I tied it in on the bottom of the shank, and I'm going to counter wrap it because it just wraps better in that direction, having been tied in on the bottom. And I want those then to lay right next to each other as I wrap up the hook to create that segmented look. So we use the word quill for the tip of a large flight feather. We use the word quill, that would be the tip that's connected to the wing. We use the word quill for a little chunk out of a feather, and I'm going to use that also when I create the wings. I'll use quill wings, but that's a different use of the word quill. And then we use the word quill to talk about this center stem, and it can be really any feather, but it's often tied in with the stem from peacock herl. This is not a peacock herl stem or quill. And I'm going to bring it up right here where I'm going to tie in the hackle and then wrap over that. I'll wrap over the top of it 3 times. Now this is a little particular about details in fly tying. Because I started the quill on the bottom of the shank, if I tie it off also on the bottom of the shank, then I have an equal number of full wraps, although I didn't really count the wraps, and I'm not doing that for a quill. That's really more of an application that I would do for a competition fly with a rib. Now, I want to be careful though, since I am on the bottom, not to cut my thread. The hackle is black, so this is a rooster hackle, but it is not a contemporary genetically engineered hackle that we would use for a dry fly. It's really kind of more of a saddle hackle. So I'm going to clip it off here where it starts to get wider. I'm going to pull down on the barbs at the base. See if I can get them to pull down on the other side here as well. And then I'm going to give it what I call a crew cut. And that's not my term. It's a term that I've picked up from others. But what happens when I give it the crew cut is that I have the barbs are very small on that stem rachis, and that gives the thread something to bite into when I wrap up over it. I am wrapping it with the shiny side up or out, so that when I wrap the hackle, it will curve back towards the bend of the hook. I'm going to grab that with my hackle plier and give it a few wraps. And because it is a rooster hackle, even if it is an old hackle or a saddle hackle, it does kind of want to stand up. Now this fly, really from 1883, and probably from before that, but published in a book in 1883, would have been fished wet. So much more in what we would consider a wet style today, but with a rooster feather. So what I'm going to do is grab all of those. Helps if I wet my fingers. All those hackles, and pull them back, and then wrap up over that end of them, like right there where they begin to bend back. And that will help them to lean back in that wet hackle fashion. And I don't know if I can find the tip of that feather. It probably doesn't matter. I'm just gonna, if I could find the tip of the feather, I would yank it out, but it's not showing itself clearly distinguishable from the other hackles. So I'm going to separate the hackles on the top. See if I can't create a little valley up there for the wing. Let me wax the thread again. The wing is also called a quill, and in this case I've taken slips, so that the slip is a chunk that I cut off the feather. But this feather is kind of equal on both sides. It's kind of more of a center feather. So I've taken the liberty to take a slip from this side and a slip from this side and back to back them, and I think they match well enough. And I have them about the width of the hook gape, and lay them down between the top, or the hackles on the top of the shank. Try to get them right on top of the shank, and then pinch them tightly between my finger and thumb. Bring my thread up, pinch the thread, and then bring it under the hook. Bring the thread up and pull up on it to cinch it, and continue to squeeze so that I try to keep that feather full for the wing, and let go and see what happens. I'm going to be okay with that. Check the other side. It looks alright. It did collapse on itself a little bit, and it's hard for it not to do that, to just get it to pinch together right there at the wrap. But that's, part of what happens when you use quill for wings. And on fancy flies, they'll often put another wing on the shoulder as a shoulder on both sides to kind of hide where that's bent together. I'll go ahead and clip out the butt ends, see if I can get them as close to my thread as possible without cutting the thread, without cutting the leader. feeling for where the end of that hook is. And then just wrapping up. Let me put some more wax on that thread. That'll help to keep it in place. I don't want the thread to slide off the front of the hook. Having a tapered hook maybe would have been better to make sure that that doesn't happen. I think I'm fine there. And part of the reason the heads on the Orvis flies were kind of square was because of how that is tied in. I'm going to use a little more wax on that thread and a large whip finisher that will help me get around this leader. And I'm kind of wondering, now that I've started using the fake gut, if part of what didn't make the popularization of hooks with eyes on them was the pain that it is to tie with that leader out there, especially when you want to put a knot on it. And I don't know what was done for knots, half hitches. Maybe they just wrapped it tight with wax and then just lacquered the head. But I've tried to do this both with a whip finisher and just a hand half hitch, and I still have to pull that leader through to make sure that I'm not tying it in. I'm just going to push my scissors against that thread. I'm going to throw a contemporary twist into this fly and put a dab of head cement on it. I do use a diluted Goop for head cement. Stick a needle in my jar, grab a drop it on the head. That'll soak in and it will dry clear the color of the thread. Since there is no eye, I don't have to worry about a clean eye. The Hamlin, from Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories, originally from Up de Graff's book, Camping the Alleghanies, published in 1883.